Dr. Ismaniza dah ready ke?
Boleh lah kot. Boleh jawab tak ready ke?
Okay, Dr. Mr. Eng?
Nak tukar.
Ya, dah ready. Yep.
Nak try test slide dulu? Ada slide?
Yes. Just give me a minute. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Alamak, kenapa tak boleh tukar background ni? Boleh kita nak tunggu few more minutes ke?
Boleh start dulu kot. Sekejap lagi nanti bertambah lah tu.
Mungkin ada yang bersiaran dari Facebook Live kan? Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good evening to everyone attending this session. Welcome to our next series of talks tonight. Okay, I was made to understand that kita boleh go bilingual tonight. So untuk malam ini kita bertuah kerana kita ada seorang lagi pakar, iaitu Mr. Ng Swee, saya sebut nama orang, Ng Swee Siang. Okay, so he's the engineer, and is a partner of the EEHSSE Consulting Berhad. Okay, and Mr. Ng will be sharing with us about managing asbestos containing materials at workplace. Okay, so untuk sejam yang kita ada ni, kita boleh tahu banyak benda lah. Kalau sebelum ni kita difahamkan asbestos ni, kita tahu ada health effects dia, tapi it is still widely used in building and construction industry. Kalau dekat negara-negara yang developed countries, negara-negara membangun, it has been banned, but in our beloved country, it is still being used. Anyway, kalau materials tu masih ada dalam bangunan, in terms of roofing ke apa ke, we need to know how do we manage it. Okay, so typically it is used for fireproofing, thermal insulation, electrical insulation, sound insulation, because of the fire retardant punya properties. So saya tak perlu cerita banyak pasal benda tu sebab saya bukan pakar dalam asbestos. Kita akan serahkan kepada pakar kita, iaitu Mr. Ng Swee Siang, because he has 19 years of experience in managing and executing various environmental, safety and health related projects. So just imagine 19 years experience. Memang banyak lah, banyak boleh tanya lah lepas ni kalau ada apa-apa yang confused, nak tahu ada ke tak kat tempat kerja kita. And then he's been involved in environmental due diligence, environmental site assessment, human health risk assessment, site remediation, asbestos survey, EHS compliance, EHS management system audits and so on. Okay, and his clients bukan Salam, bukan Malaysia saja, tapi it expands to Southeast Asia, China, India, Japan and Oman. Okay, so nampak memang ada banyak lah, banyak exposure, banyak pengalaman beliau deal dengan clients yang berbeza. So untuk skop kita pada malam ini on asbestos hazards, asbestos ni, he actually has experience to be trained in the Asbestos Hazards Emergency Response Act, AHERA, Building Inspection and Developing Management Plan. And he has led the multiple asbestos inspection projects, bukan kat Malaysia tapi dekat Japan, India and Southeast Asia. So banyak memang kalau negara luar dia boleh buat apatah lagi negara kita mesti it's doable lah, whatever that is implementable. Mr. Ng is also one of the trainers for asbestos risk assessment and risk management, risk management training, appointed by MIHA, Malaysia Industrial Hygiene Association, from 2017 to 2021. So ambillah peluang ini untuk belajar daripada Mr. Ng. Just a little bit background. He is a graduate engineer from the Board of Engineers, a graduate member of the Institute of Engineers Malaysia, and he has the AHERA Building Inspection and Management Planning Certificate. So I guess without further ado, I should pass this to our expert, Mr. Ng Swee Siang, for his sharing. Please welcome, Mr.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ismaniza. All right, first of all, I would like to thank all of you to attend the sharing session tonight, and also not to forget, MSOS for inviting me to share a little bit of my experience here with all of you here. Okay, so without further ado, I think you can see my screen, right? My slides here. So,
can you reshare your slide, sir?
Oh, you can't see my slides. Okay. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me project it out. Okay. So what I'm going to share tonight, these are the outlines that I hope that I can successfully deliver this to you, so you understand. There are four points or four important points that I would like to share with you tonight. That's the first one is, what is asbestos and where can we find asbestos? All right, this is important, especially for workplaces that you have a lot of workers working in that facility or working in a building. So you would like to know, you must, or you probably are interested to know where could be this found in your building. Second one is actually, now you know asbestos, where can you find it? And then second thing you probably want to identify is actually, or understand is actually what is the health effect, is asbestos harmful to human? Of course, like what Dr. Ismaniza mentioned just now, it is, it's commonly known that asbestos is one of the carcinogenic or cancer-causing substance. All right, and then the third one is how to identify asbestos-containing material, ACM, we call it in short, at workplace, and then how to manage it. I think these last 2 points these last 2 points are the most important one, because identifying is actually one of the things that you can, not too difficult to identify it, but how to manage it is actually the key thing, to help you to lower the risk of your people or your workers from exposing to airborne asbestos fibers. All right. So I won't go through this because I think Dr. Ismaniza has, she did a good introduction on myself. So I won't go through this. I'll just skip this one. And then just a little bit about my company. I'm actually a partner of this company called ISA Consulting Sdn Bhd. And we are a company that offers different EHS services, including technical service, technical safety, sustainability, and social consultancy. All right. And then we have a team of people who has 20 to 30 years of experience in different services, different experience in EHS services or consulting experience. And then our team members collectively, they work in different international EHS consulting company. And they have experience that covered more than 20 countries, which include Southeast Asia, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Australia, Middle East, UK, and US. So these are the services that our company offers, include merger and acquisition or due diligence services, capital projects, process safety, and others, you can see from this list. And from on the right side of the slide, you can see these are the clients that we work with in the past. If you need more information, you can actually go to our website. That's www.isa.com, or you can send me an email, then we can get back to you on any of your questions. So without any further ado, now we go straight into what is asbestos. I think most of you heard about asbestos, the term asbestos, but asbestos actually consists of 6 types of asbestos fibers, that it can be further categorized into 2 different groups based on its physical characteristics. First one is serpentine group. And under this serpentine group, we have only one asbestos fiber. We call it, I think most of you probably have heard about this. We call it white asbestos, or we call it chrysotile. So this is the only asbestos fibers that fall into this group. No, this serpentine is actually fibers that is longer and is in wavy shape. All right. And then we have other 5 asbestos fibers that fall under the amphibo group. So we have amosite, which also called or known as brown asbestos or red asbestos. We have crocidolite or blue asbestos, and then we have tremolite, anthophyllite, and actinolite. Now, the one that is widely used in industry is the first 3 one, chrysotile. We can find this in those asbestos cement products, like the corrugated asbestos cement board, wall board or ceiling board, even like transite pipe, some asbestos cement pipe. It contains chrysotile. And then the other 2 that is widely used, amosite and crocidolite. Right? These are the main 3 types of asbestos that you can find in mostly or almost all of the asbestos containing material. And the other 3 is actually quite rarely identified, or not really widely used in industry. Now, why asbestos is used in industry? First is because of its flexibility. There's like for example, chrysotile is flexible. It's actually longer fiber that you can actually weave it into like a fabric. All right, and then we also use asbestos because of its tensile strength. like some of the asbestos containing material, for example, I think this is the most commonly found in Malaysia, that is the asbestos cement roofing. They use asbestos fibers because they want to produce asbestos cement product with very thin and light, in terms of the material, they want a light and thin material, but that light and thin material, if we do not add in any reinforcement or reinforcing material, like asbestos fiber, then this thing, we wouldn't be able to produce such a thin and light material, especially when we use cement. So the asbestos fiber is actually the one holding all the holding all the cement together, so that you can produce a very thin layer of asbestos cement material. So we need that tensile strength. And then, of course, this is very, I think most of people know about it. It's actually why asbestos is so famous. It's because of its thermal conductivity, very low thermal conductivity, and it is not combustible. So it's widely used in thermal insulation system, meaning thermal insulation for your pipe or for your equipment. All right. So these are the things that you can, why asbestos is used in industry. So from a photo on the right side of the slides, you can see that these are some of the examples of asbestos, where you can find asbestos. So the one on the upper right corner is actually the asbestos cement corrugated panel. You can use it. You probably can find it on the roof, or it's actually you can use it sometime at the wall as a wall panel. And then you can also find asbestos in fireproofing material. This is quite common in some of the steel structure, that they need to apply some fireproofing material to the steel structure to just prolong the strength, or to maintain the building. If there's a fire incident, they don't want the building to collapse so soon. They want the building to hold on for a certain period of time before it is collapsed, because of the fire, because of the temperature, especially for steel structure. And then we have another one, of course, is pipe lagging or pipe insulation for thermal, especially hot pipes, like steam pipes and all that. You can easily find this. All right, so so you can find some other examples of asbestos application of asbestos, like the one on the right is actually the asbestos cement pipe, or we call it transite pipe. And then same thing, this is another example on the lower right corner, that is the asbestos cement roofing. So we use asbestos because of its few properties, like flexibility, high tensile strength, non-combustibility, resistant to heat, and low electrical conductivity, and also resistant to chemical attack. So these are the reasons why asbestos is widely used in industry. And some of the common ACM that we can find in Malaysia or at our workplace. First one, asbestos cement board. Second, vinyl floor tiles. Some of the vinyl floor tiles, especially those used in the produced, I think they're talking about 80s or 90s, especially in US, the vinyl floor tiles contain asbestos fibers. And then asbestos cement ceiling board, I think this is quite common. And then you can see this in school. You can see this in some of the houses that built long time ago. Yep. Fire rated door, especially those old fire rated door, the insulation material that is sandwiched between the wooden panel could be asbestos. And then packing material, these are the rope, like, look like a rope that use chrysotile, they produced by chrysotile, that they use to seal some of the equipment, especially if you have furnace or oven. You can see some of the seal along the frame of your door frame of your oven or your furnace that could be containing asbestos. And then the one on the right is actually the sealing putty for wall penetration of some of the, this is sealing material. If you have cables or pipes penetrating through certain penetrating through a wall or sometimes through a floor. They will use some sealant material to just seal off that opening. So this sealing material could also contain asbestos. Thermal insulation is, I think, it's quite common that you can find it anywhere, especially for hot pipes and heated equipment. And then there are some other materials that contain asbestos, such as brake shoes for vehicles, or if you have elevator in your factory, you can go to the top of the building. There's a motto, the motto that there's a hoist that pull your lift up and down. There's a brake shoes within it that may also contain asbestos. And then some woven asbestos fabric. I think this is quite common. Some people use this to wrap around the exhaust pipe from your what do you call that, the generator, genset, and also some of the gaskets. Not all gaskets, but some of the gaskets may also contain asbestos. Yeah, of course now because people are getting more aware of the hazards of asbestos, so we have more substitutes for asbestos, especially for gasket or whatever insulation material. But for those insulation material that's old, that you probably are talking about 80s or even earlier or 90s, it may contain asbestos. And one of the challenges is actually for us as like myself, for us as a building inspector, sometimes quite difficult for us to identify asbestos, even though through sampling, because sometimes people in the past, you have one insulation that could be asbestos in the past that you used as a pipe lighting or insulation. But when you do renovation, or you want to do to refurbish your piping, sometimes people don't just remove the old insulation. They will just wrap a new insulation over the old insulation, that you have 2 layers of insulation, that in the inner side, the inner material is actually, the one inside is actually asbestos containing material, and one outside is actually non-asbestos containing material. Sometimes this could be a challenge. You may also find the same thing in your factory or at the workplace, that if you look at the history of your floor tiles, sometimes it was a vinyl floor tiles, and then it was there was a new floor tiles laid over the old floor tiles, that the one below is actually asbestos containing material, and the new one is actually the non-asbestos containing material. So in a nutshell, I think if you look at these slides, actually asbestos can be found in a lot of places, at home or at factories. We're talking about from the roof all the way to wall. And then if you have like heat generating equipment like boiler or furnace or something, those insulation materials may contain asbestos. And then ceiling board, we're talking about the asbestos ceiling. And then interior wall, sometimes the wall board, the wall board itself could be a gypsum or non-containing asbestos. Sometimes the sealant used to seal up the joint between the board, or to conceal certain holes on the wall panel, may contain asbestos. Yeah, so it's sometimes a little bit tricky for wall board. So we have to sample sometimes, not just the wall board material, but sometimes we have to try to sample from the joint, that the joint compound or the ceiling material could be asbestos containing material. And then floor tiles, we have air handling units, we have domestic appliances like gaskets and those things, and fire blanket, some water tank, and that was found in I think in UK, that they found that some of the water cistern actually contain certain amount of asbestos fibers. So these are the locations where asbestos fibers or asbestos containing material are commonly found. So we talk about where can we find asbestos containing material. Now I think I will share a short video about what are the health effects from exposing to asbestos fibers. So So this is a 4 minutes video. So
If asbestos fibers are allowed to become airborne, air currents can move and spread them about the work area. Unprotected workers without proper air purifying respirators can inhale these fibers into their respiratory system. While many inhaled fibers are trapped in the nose and throat, others make their way deep into the lungs. Here, they enter into millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. Each of these tiny air sacs is surrounded by capillaries, which are separated from air by a very thin membrane. The function of the alveoli is the oxygenation of blood and the removal of waste carbon dioxide from the blood. As each breath of air is inhaled, oxygen is absorbed through the sac's thin wall into the blood. At the same time, carbon dioxide is removed from the blood back through the wall and then exhaled. It is here in the thin alveoli wall that asbestos fibers do much of their damage. Many of the microscopic fibers entering the lungs make their way into the alveoli. The presence of these fibers affects the alveoli membrane. Over a period of time, scar tissue builds, causing the wall to thicken. Eventually, the ability of the affected alveoli to transfer oxygen and carbon dioxide through the wall is decreased or stopped altogether. If sufficient fibers are inhaled over a long period of time, the affected person's ability to breathe will begin to decrease. This condition is called asbestosis. As the condition worsens, oxygen starvation sets in. Severe physical disability or even death may be the eventual result. If you were an asbestos worker who also happens to be a cigarette smoker, then you are potentially facing an even more severe problem than asbestos. As cigarette smoke moves down into the lungs, it passes through the bronchioles, the small tubes that lead to the alveoli. Here, both cigarette smoke and asbestos fibers can cause irritation to the bronchial wall tissues. The damage from cigarette can develop into lung cancer. The combined effects of both asbestos and cigarette smoke greatly increase this risk. As a matter of fact, if you were a worker who has been heavily exposed to asbestos in the past and you also smoke, then you may have up to 90 times greater risk of contracting cancer than a worker who doesn't smoke. If you're one of these, you should give up smoking. And one thing more, if you do quit smoking, your chances of getting lung cancer will be reduced by 50% in just 5 years. There is another cancer that can be caused by inhaling asbestos fibers. This one involves the pleura, the membranes that line the chest cavity, lungs, and diaphragm. Here, asbestos fibers can migrate from the lungs into one or both of the pleura membranes. Embedded in this manner, damage to the surrounding tissues can result. The lining can become thickened. In some cases, a few rare individuals may develop a form of cancer known as malignant mesothelioma, which is usually fatal, generally within 6 months of diagnosis.
all right, so this short video actually explains, what are the diseases that can be caused by asbestos. We were looking at diseases that's caused by inhalation of airborne asbestos fibers. Those are those fibers that's getting into our lung. So first one, of course, asbestosis, because of the, like what you saw in the video clip just now, because of the fibers went all the way into your alveoli. And then it caused scarring on the alveoli and thickening of the wall of alveoli and causing deficiency in oxygen exchange, so that will cause that will cause the people or the workers or the patient some issues in breathing, they're short of breath. And the second one is lung cancer. And the third one is actually a melanine pleural mesothelioma. Mesothelioma is something that is really, it's caused by asbestos, it's really rare, but it will take long time for this to be developed. It's actually the cancer of our pleural membrane. If you see the two diagram on the right of the slides here, you can see, the lung membrane outside of the lung or covering the lung, those asbestos fibers somehow get into that place and then cause some inflammation, and it may develop into cancer later on. So we know that asbestos is cancer causing, is one of the carcinogenic, and it's already known, well known for a long period of time. And the worst thing is actually, it doesn't mean that you inhale asbestos fibers today or this year and we're going to contract lung cancer in the next year or the coming 2 or 3 years. The health effect may come, may only happen after 30 years. There's a latency period of 30 years, meaning that the workers who are exposed to asbestos fibers this year, or this particular period of time now, he or she may get cancer, may contract lung cancer or mesothelioma 30 years later, 30 years down the road. So this is something that quite scary. And then, like what mentioned the video clip just now, if you're a smoker, then there will be a synergetic effect. They may cause lung cancer with a higher rate compared to a non-smoker. If you are exposed to asbestos and you are smoking, you have 50 times higher chance of contracting lung cancer compared to those non-smoker. So let's take a look on the exposure level, the occupational exposure level from different countries. We have Malaysia, US, we have ACGIH, US, OSHA, UK, and Australia. What you can see here is actually, the PL or the 8-hour time weighted average. They all adopted the same level. It's 0.1 fiber per cc. Yeah. So these are actually similar across all these countries. And of course, some of the standards, they develop some excursion limit for short exposure, like the one in US OSHA, they're talking about 1 fiber per cc for 30 minutes exposure, and UK talking about 10 minutes exposure with peak of 0.6 fiber per cc. Now, what I would like to bring you to attention is actually, whatever exposure limit mentioned in the standards that we looked at in the previous slides, those are not considered a safe limit. Meaning that, if you look at this is a chart actually published by US EPA. If you look at the chances of contracting cancer or mesothelioma cancer risk over a lifetime of 1 over 10,000 to 1 over a million. These are the range of cancer risk that's acceptable, from 1 over 10,000 to 1 over a million. But at 0.1 fiber per cc, the risk level is actually at 2.3 over 1,000, meaning that 1,000 people, there will be 2.3 people contracting cancer over 20 years of exposure. So if you're coming from this perspective, meaning that even though we are complying with the exposure limit of 0.1 fiber per cc, it doesn't actually guarantee that you are safe. Because one important point that we have to remember is actually whatever fiber that we inhale and it get into our lung, even one, the one fiber, all the fiber that eventually sit in your lung, it won't come out. It will stay there for the rest of your life. So these are the things that, because of the repetitive scarring or damage to your alveoli that cause scarring on your alveoli or the air sacs that cause asbestosis or later on lung cancer. So this is the thing, whatever going into lung, it won't come out. And that's why, there's no safe level for exposure to asbestos. So we try to limit or try to avoid any exposure to asbestos as possible. So now we talk about, just now we talk about what is asbestos, and then what are the health effects of asbestos containing material, exposure to asbestos fibers. Now, if we have, or we suspect that, our factory or our workplace may have asbestos containing material, we suspect that because based on our understanding, there are few common asbestos containing material that you can find from, like what I mentioned just now from the previous slides, and you observe the same thing at your factory, and then you may want to know, what are the next steps, what are the way forward for you to manage it and identify and confirm it. So there's only one way, because we can't identify asbestos containing material by visual inspection. There's no way that we can just look at the material and then we say this is 100% asbestos containing material. Although for some experienced assessor, they may, because of their previous experience, they may be able to identify those are asbestos containing material, ACM, but still they need to send samples to the lab for confirmation. So the only way that for you to confirm whether a material is asbestos containing material or non-asbestos containing material is through building inspection and also bulk sampling. All right, so you need to get a competent person to inspect the material. And at the same time, when the assessor inspect the material, he or she will also do a quick assessment on the conditions of the asbestos containing material, because the conditions of the asbestos material will determine whether there's people or the workers are exposed to airborne asbestos fibers, meaning that a material ACM in bad conditions, it's like peeling off, is cracking, it's breaking down, So those are the asbestos containing material that will generate a lot of asbestos fibers, airborne asbestos fibers, and that's the particular material that will cause risk or cause exposure to your workers. So you need to get an assessor or building inspector to come to do the inspection, to do assessment on the conditions of the asbestos containing material, and at the same time collect samples and send it to the lab for analysis. Now, if you don't get because of certain reasons, like because of the budget issues or because of the operation issues, that you can't just simply get the assessor to come over to your place to do the assessment, then you probably, the way that you want to manage is actually you assume, you just presume this is a asbestos to manage it. It is the some precautions, when people want to work on this contained material, you have to apply certain procedures or use certain PPE. Just assume that it is asbestos contained material until it is tested as a non-asbestos contained material. So through bulk sampling, then you would be able to confirm whether this is asbestos containing material. All right. So if this is not a asbestos containing material, then no action required. You don't have to worry about that. But if it is an asbestos containing material, then you have to start looking into whether you can remove it, especially those if the quantity is small and it can be easily removed, then you probably want to just quickly remove it, and then they will save you a lot of resources, because otherwise you have to establish an asbestos management plan. You have to first establish a asbestos containing material risk ACR, and then you have to develop, you have to train up your people. There are a lot of things that you probably have to do to manage the risk. Now, the purpose of asbestos management plan is actually to manage the risk, to try to minimize the chances of your workers from exposing to asbestos fibers, airborne asbestos fibers, especially those coming from the asbestos containing material that is in bad shape. All right, so these are the main objective of why we need to develop an asbestos management plan. Now, before you engage a building inspector or any assessor, asbestos competent person to come to your place to do bulk sampling or building inspection, you probably want to also check with your corporate or your company, to check on what is the definition of asbestos containing material that you need to manage. Of course, AHIRA, the US EPA defined asbestos containing material as any material that contains more than 1% of asbestos fiber using PLM, polarized light microscopy. So whatever asbestos containing material that has more than 1% of asbestos is regulated under AHIRA, that they need to, based on the regulation, they need to manage it. Yeah? But some of the countries, like for example, Europe, they may have they had their definition of asbestos-free material is actually 0.1% for asbestos fibers, and some country they want totally asbestos-free, no asbestos at all. So before we visit, or before you engage any asbestos assessor who come to your place for sampling or perform assessment, you probably want to define this first, so that it's aligned with your corporate requirements. But generally, I think US, if you're following US EPA's requirements or definition, we'll look at more than 1% for asbestos containing asbestos fiber as the one that we need to manage or we need to control. So these are the lab testing. So we have two main testing methods. First one is the polarized light microscopy. So under this PLM method, we have three different methods. First one is just a non-point count method. These are all the asbestos testing, microscopy testing. It's either you use PLM or you use transmission electron microscopy. You use TEM. I think for US EPA, they accept results from PLM, but under certain circumstances, some of the samples, because the asbestos fibers, the size of the asbestos fibers is actually finer or smaller. So PLM may not be sufficient to detect the asbestos fiber, so they may have to use TEM. For PLM, when you engage a lab or when the assessor engage a lab, they need to tell the lab whether they want to go for non-point count method, or they want to forego for 400 point count method, or they want to go for all the way to the highest, that's 1,000 point count method. They give you different level of reporting. Of course, the non-point count method is the cheapest and the fastest, because the lab workers or technicians, they will just predict or estimate the amount of asbestos based on their experience and observation under the microscopy. They get the sample and they look under the microscopy, and they will just roughly say, all right, this is potentially or most likely more than 1%, and this is asbestos containing material. But if you want more quantitative one, then you should request for 400 point counts, 400 point count method or 1000 point count method. They give you a better assurance in terms of results. And then another TEM is the one that probably most of the time we will use for samples with fine fibers such as vinyl floor tiles. And when we send the samples to the lab, sometimes also you want to remind them whether they should use, do an additional procedure on these samples, like what they call gravimetry reduction, which is actually an acid treatment or etching or heating the material so that it can remove all those organic binding material like vinyl or asphalt, so that they can identify the asbestos fibers. Those samples that contain organic binders, they are required to go through this gravimetry reduction. We talk about assessing the conditions of the asbestos containing material just now. This is one of the method to assess the risk coming from the, how bad actually the condition is, and if the material is in bad shape, then the risk of this generating airborne asbestos fiber is higher. So they will look at, they can do it qualitatively, or they may develop certain metrics that give you some ranking, how to rank, ranking of the asbestos containing material that they sample from your facility. So they will look at friability, whether the thing is friable, the material is friable, whether this is adhesion or cohesion, whether it's easy to stick. It means it's easy to stick to other material. So that is actually a concern, because it will just, if you have workers just walk by and then he has his shoulder rub on the let's say a wallboard, and then this thing stick to his shirt, that will cause a lot of fiber generation. So it depends on this is adhesion and cohesion. We're talking about severity, how severe this damage is, whether this is blistering, whether this is watermark, there's a watermark there, or peeling off. And then they're talking about how big is the extent of the damage, and then they're talking about continuous impact, whether this thing, especially like, for example, I give an example, is actually if there's a wallboard, asbestos containing wallboard behind a door, that you have people assessing the area through the wall, through the door very frequent, and the wall is banging on the wallboard from time to time, then you have continuous impact that may cause periodic release of asbestos fibers. And then, of course, they may also look at the accessibility of the material to your workers. If, let's say, the material is actually within a reachable height of a person, or average height of person or of workers, then is actually the chance of damage is actually higher. So they will look at these few criteria. Of course, these are not all. They may look at other criteria as well based on the experience of the asbestos assessor, but these are the common things that they may look at when they assess the condition of the asbestos containing material. So what we talked about was the the inspection and also bulk sampling. Now, after inspection and bulk sampling, and if we still identify asbestos material, we confirm, there's a lab report that confirm that we have asbestos containing material present in our workplace, then we need to develop the asbestos management plan. So under the asbestos management plan, you have, these are a few chapters, some recommended chapters or some recommended contents of the asbestos management plan. You can see, these are actually quite a number of things that we need to address in the asbestos management plan, from the objective to the register, ACM register. So this is a register to identify all your asbestos containing material in your building. And then we talk about the abatement and removal plan, how soon we will get this. We will allocate certain resource to manage this or to remove this. And roles and responsibilities, we're talking about at least you must appoint a manager or a custodian for this asbestos management plan, and also train workers, internally, that these workers will perform the inspection. They will do the inspection to look at the conditions of your asbestos containing material from time to time. And then you also need to look at compliance side, whether there's any regulatory requirements that you need to comply with. And then how to communicate these asbestos hazards to the workers. So some people, to the minimum, you should use some asbestos containing material label, some of the labels, ACM label, asbestos label on the asbestos containing material itself. Or you probably have to conduct certain training, awareness training to your workers that, you have asbestos containing material here. So don't disturb it, And then you have to develop your surveillance or inspection plan, and then the work control or PTW, permit to work, to make sure that no unauthorized people will contact or disturb the asbestos containing material. And then your operation and maintenance work practices, like for example, you still have a technician who needs to sometimes drill holes on the wall board or the ceiling board. So how should they proceed with those work, safely? There are certain methods or certain procedures that they can practice. And then how to manage the waste, how to keep the record, and competency training. Those are the things that you probably have covered in the asbestos management plan. So under the asbestos management plan, if the purpose of this is actually we want to manage the risk before the asbestos containing material is totally removed from your site or from your facility. So you probably, because of, if you don't have resource issues, you can just arrange it to remove it within a very short time. If you have resources issue or you have actually a lot of asbestos containing material that you need to manage, then you probably have to prioritize this based on the risk. So for those high risk material, you probably want to prioritize it for removal and abatement. And then for medium risk, then you want to look at whether you can actually do abatement or removal a little bit later. But in this case, you have to do inspection, make sure that this ACM is actually monitored from time to time. Depends on the conditions and depends on how frequent is, whether it's actually accessible to workers, how easy is accessible to workers. And then for those low risk material, you just have to inspect it. And then those are the things that you can actually put at the bottom of the list for your abatement or removal work. And then any actions taken to remove the asbestos containing material, we need to update the register and also your management plan. And if we observe any deterioration of the asbestos containing material from time to time, then we have to update the asbestos containing material and also the risk, the prioritization of the asbestos removal or abatement work. You have to reprioritize it based on the conditions of the asbestos containing material. So these are the content of the asbestos containing asbestos management plan that you probably have to develop if you have ACM at the workplace or if you identify ACM at your workplace. Some example, these are the example of asbestos labels that you can use on the ACM. And then this is what I talked about just now, the example of safe work procedure. If you want to drill a hole, there's a method. This is actually coming. I found this from the one of the website in Australia website. So they recommended, these are the procedures. This is the recommended procedure for drilling a hole on a wall board that is a ACM. That's a confirmed ACM. So there are certain procedures you have to make. You probably have to implement if you have asbestos containing material at your workplace, including those PPE, coverall, respirator, and how to dispose it, how to clean the work area after the maintenance work. Those are the things that you probably have to train up your technicians, your maintenance workers on how to work on those asbestos containing material. I'll go through this quickly. These are the options of abatement. So you're talking about enclosure or encasement or encapsulation or partial removal. So enclosure and encasement is quite similar. You just cover the asbestos containing material with other material that's non-asbestos containing material, and you conceal it to make sure that it's not exposed and no fibers will be generated from the asbestos containing material. So these are temporary control. If you have asbestos containing material and you can't remove it in a short period of time, you can consider this. And the best or the most effective way is actually to have it totally removed from your workplace. Yeah. So this is actually talking about use of asbestos in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, it's actually not banned, although a lot of countries has already banned asbestos, but we have not banned asbestos. We only, I think, we partially banned it because in our use regulation, we prohibit use of crystolite, one of the asbestos type, in our workplace. But there's other actions taken by the government. They have already prohibited the use of asbestos in schools, clinics, and hospitals in 1999. And in 2005, they prohibit use of asbestos in all government buildings. But asbestos construction material or building material is still they are still sold in the market, and there are currently no act or regulations prohibit the use of asbestos in private buildings in Malaysia. But DOSH published the guideline for asbestos removal in 2017. So they have certain requirements. If you have any asbestos removal work, or you have a plan to remove your asbestos from your buildings or workplace, you need to comply with these requirements. This is published by DOSH in 2017. All right, so I think I'll skip these slides. This is actually a summary, a short video to summarize our discussion today. But in view of the time we have right now, I think I will skip this one first, and then if you have any question, and we can talk about this here now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ng, for that inspiring talk. We do have questions from the audience. Maybe I can read it one by one to you. The first one is, okay, somebody asked about, can crocidolite blue asbestos be used in Malaysia? And where do can we find all this?
Crocidolite, I think, is already banned in Malaysia. If you refer to use regulations, use of crocidolite is actually prohibited. Amosite and crocidolite, they are mostly found in fireproofing material. Of course, the most common one in industry application is chrysotile. I think more than 70 or 80% of asbestos containing material contain chrysotile alone. So some of the older insulation material, or some vinyl floor tiles, the one I talk about, the vinyl floor tiles, it may contain amosite or crocidolite, but these are not as common as chrysotile. So chrysotile is the most common one.
Okay, seeing that some has been banned and some are still being, widely used, how do we identify if a material contains asbestos by just looking at it, or do we need to, or is there a specific scientific testing for that?
Yeah, so the only way that we can confirm whether a material is asbestos containing material or not is through lab testing. So we need to get the samples. So what the surveyor or the assessor will do is they will just take a small piece, the small samples from the suspected material, and they send it to the lab for analysis. So we need to we can only confirm whether this is an ACM or non-ACM through lab testing. Yep.
All right. Well, I remember back in my hometown, in my parents' house, they do have asbestos ceilings, and we know that it is advisable not to remove it, because it's going to be hazardous to those workers in charge of maintaining it. Okay, and even Dr. Subra, answers one of the questions, saying that disposing is an important element, but monitoring asbestos in the workplace and asbestos is among exposed is vital. Okay, so partially it has answered the questions from all those asking about what do we do with all those asbestos ceilings, because now that we cannot remove it, do we have to just grin and bear with it? Yeah, and what say you about this?
Yeah, I think asbestos cement material is actually one of the easiest material that we can manage. It can be managed in the easiest way.
So
now,
just leave it as is.
We can leave it as it is if it's in good condition, because asbestos cement is quite stable.
You're trying to say, sir?
Sorry. So asbestos cement material is stable, more stable compared to other materials. In terms of friability, it's actually not readily friable. So if it's in good condition, you can leave it there, leave it in place. But if you have renovation work, or you have, if the asbestos containing material, the asbestos cement board is actually at a location whereby you have a lot of vibration. Like, for example, one of the cases that I observed in the past was, they have this asbestos wall board, and then they install the aircon unit, through the wall. There's not a split unit, the old type of aircon that you have the compressor at the back, and then the aircon is actually in the room. So that generates a lot of vibration. When you have this condition, then the asbestos cement material become not safe, because over years, this thing will break off, and then it will generate fibers. But of course, again, if it's stable, if it's good condition, if you want to be extra safe, you can just paint over it, and it will reduce the risk a little bit more.
Okay. Now that we know that it is very tiny, it's fine, and it's airborne, what about removing asbestos? Spraying with water while removing the asbestos, using wetting method. Do you reckon that's advisable?
Yeah. So those are the things that the contractor for asbestos removal, when they perform asbestos removal work. So wet method is actually one of the most important thing that they need to practice. So they will suppress the generation of asbestos fiber, airborne asbestos fiber, before they remove it. So there are a few methods that you can apply water to that asbestos containing material, particularly the friable one, like pipe insulation. Of course, they are talking about augmented, or they actually mix the water with some detergent to just make sure that it reduces the surface tension, and those water, they can hold the asbestos fibers better than just water alone. So this is the recommended method, and this is something that they need to do. Otherwise, they have to probably equip themselves with the highest level of respiratory protection.
All right, thank you very much. There's also some questions asking about the PPE, and Nkunase pointed out Asbestos Process Regulation 1986, the Sub-Regulation 9, okay, that is on the PPE. And somebody was asking about Moldex 6000 full face piece respirator, and another one asking about the coverall. Well, any recommendation from you?
Yeah. Unless your workplace is actually producing, or you're producing asbestos material. Otherwise, if you're talking about have asbestos containing material, building material in your factory, you're not required to wear respirator or coverall. Coverall and respirator is required when you have workers doing sampling, like myself, when I do sampling, because I know that when I break the asbestos containing material, there will be some fibers drop on my shirts or on my clothes. And also for those workers who work in the asbestos removal work, respirator and coverall is actually the most important PPE that they need to use when they perform the work.
Speaking of the PPE, well, we know it's for the protection, but Mr. Kanagasingam Mutia mentioned about health screening of the workers involved in, asbestos removal. Do you? He said that you missed that part in your lecture.
If you're going back to the use regulations, I think since cross-light is in the second schedule, first I can't remember. So that the health screening or the health surveillance is actually mandatory for those factory that use cross-light.
Okay, all right. Well, we know that from what you just mentioned towards the end of your talk just now, that people develop asbestosis or mesothelioma after ample exposure, after many years of exposure. So what should we advise? This is a question for Army. What should we advise when a worker who has retired after 5 years was diagnosed by a doctor saying that he has asbestosis? So this could be due to the exposure at work, okay, in the past 14 years. Can he make a claim? Do you know anything about it?
I think in Malaysia, I'm not sure whether we have any cases like this in the past, that people have successfully make a claim because of the asbestosis. But sometimes, for us to make a claim, we need to have a very good record, medical record, or your exposure record at workplace. If you're working in a factory that produces asbestos products, then you are exposing to high level asbestos, that's already confirmed from their monitoring and all that. And, there's no proper PPE given to you, then that may be the case that you can file a claim. But I'm not sure. I haven't actually myself. I am not involved in helping any workers in claiming, doing the claim, insurance claim or social claim on the.
It's hard to see, right?
Cases. Yeah.
The effect would only be seen after many years.
Yeah, it's 30 years. I think unless you have a good maintain a good record, then probably yes, you can file a case. Yeah, I think I don't have much to comment about this because I'm not really working into this area. My experience is more on the how to help my client identify the asbestos containing material.
And, well, I remember when I was little, I used to play with some asbestos, layers to scoop sands and things like that. And as I grow older would make me old now. Okay, as I grow old, I realize that there's no problem with the asbestos if it is not touched, if it is not disturbed. So it makes me concerned. Well, the past exposure is a past, okay, because I have not been exposed to asbestos as far as I'm concerned now. But this question by Alicia Wong made me, wonder, how do we define good condition of asbestos material? Is it by the physical appearance? Because just looking at it, we might see it as asbestos as is. We don't know how does it degrade. We don't know whether it has released all those fine fibers into the air.
Yeah, asbestos containing material or contain asbestos fiber that can be released into the air. So it depends on whether the material, the product itself, is actually friable or non-friable. Meaning that you can crumble it, you can press it, and you can crumble it with a hand pressure. So those materials is actually high risk, and then it can generate a lot of asbestos fibers, and it's easy it can generate a lot of fibers. But for those material which is we consider. Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
The more stable asbestos is that you is together organic salt or vinyl, and also the asbestos containing material, asbestos cement material. Yeah, those are the things that is more stable compared to those insulation material. Of course, I wouldn't advise any of the people to just go and play with the asbestos containing material, although it is stable. Yeah. So of course, one of the key criteria when we assess the risk, or we want to prioritize whether this is the material that we should remove or prioritize in our removal work, is actually look at the physical conditions. So if friable, it is damaged, then it's the one that we need to prioritize. That's the one that we probably consider as high risk material that need to be removed immediately if possible. And those that is stable, good condition, no breaking, and it is like vinyl floor tiles is non-friable. Those things we can actually consider stable, and it's safe to use unless it's actually damaged.
All right. Okay. Okay. I think time is up, but I think maybe I can just pick one more question about the standard regulations that's already covered. Car brake pad. Okay. Well, I've been in Australia and I've seen signages, reminding the maintenance workers because they might need to go up the roof for, checking the insulation, especially during summer or winter. But this is a question from China, was it? Asking about how do other countries, it's from Junaina, how does other countries like the UK handle disposal of asbestos containing material? Okay, because you have had a very vast experience in other countries. So like asbestos cement pipe, and are the pipes allowed to be left underground after pipe replacement, or how? Do they really replace the pipes, or they just leave it as is?
Now, asbestos containing material, let's say, if you're talking about disposal material method, it's actually through landfill. Now you can't burn asbestos containing material because that will further release the fiber into the air and then get more people to expose those asbestos fibers. So the way of disposing asbestos containing material is through landfill, or buried it under the ground. Of course, you're talking about asbestos pipe, underground pipe. It is safe, if let's say if the pipe is actually still functional, and you don't have to, it's below ground, it's functional, it's good condition, then you don't have to actually have to bother about removing it. You can leave it at the place unless there's a redevelopment that you want to, there's a redevelopment plan that you need to remove those pipes. Then those pipes need to be excavated out and disposed in a safer manner. Or
Is
otherwise,
it the same concept? Oh, sorry. Sorry to interrupt. Is it the same concept with the car brake pads when people brake, so it releases the,
Yeah, car brake pads is actually a more complicated issues, because this is not building material then, and not all, we shouldn't assume that all car brakes has asbestos fibers. There are certain car brakes, like for example, some cars produce. I read this report, I think in last year, a few months ago. They're talking about brake pads produced in China. Some of the China produced car brake pads has asbestos fibers. So those things, I think the risk is actually to the maintenance workers. Of course, the public are actually exposed to asbestos fiber, especially when they apply brakes, at the street. So for workers who the maintenance, in the car maintenance workshop, the workers in the maintenance workshop, they are exposing to these fibers. If let's say when they change the car brake pads, they're exposing to this asbestos fiber and they're at risk. So the thing is actually, if you want to control this, is actually, they have to use all the PPE that we mentioned about. Respiratory protection, the first one they have to use, and then the brake pads, I think once they change it, that need to be disposed properly. It has to go to the landfill.
Okay, so I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Ng, for your sharing session. I learned a lot, and I guess all the participants have gained a lot of information from tonight's session. All right, well, I guess that's it for us tonight. Maybe I should pass to the Secretariat of MSOS. Wahida, are you there?
Yeah, Doctor. Okay, I think we can wrap up for tonight. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Ng.
Thank you.
Should we have a photo session?
Okay.
You might want to turn on the cameras, guys. Thank you, Zoe. Okay, we are waiting for you guys to turn on your cameras so that we can take photos together. Group photo. Hi, Hussein. All right. So Wahida, are you going to snap the photos page by page?
All right. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Okay. Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ng.
Thank you
Thanks to
very
the
much.
speaker. Thanks to the moderator. Awesome session.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Boleh tutorial
Thanks.
ni Zul.
Lupa nak cari tudung.
Tahu.